Checks are being made on a number of patients suffering from chest conditions in a bid to rule out more cases of Legionnaire's disease. Results will not be known until the end of this week. The 66-year-old man with the disease remains seriously ill, but Legionnaire's is not the primary cause for his condition. Contamination of another woman patient has been ruled out. Yesterday, all patients who could be sent home were discharged, while the decontamination process at the hospital was carried out. Remaining patients and staff were banned from taking showers for 24 hours as a precautionary measure. The air cooling towers, hot and cold water systems, towels and equipment have been disinfected, and final safety checks are yet to be made. "73 competitors came from Grafton, Gosford, Sydney and of course Lake Macquarie to compete in the regatta, and the main prize for the best Lake Macquarie club was a sabo worth around $3,000. Individual winners came away with sailing equipment and medals. Good sailing conditions for heats 2 and 3 today provided a challenge for the competitors, some aged as young as 6. Organisers say the regatta attracted the largest number of sabos the lake has seen for the past 10 years, and the young sailors were spurred on by the knowledge that Ben Lexon began his career sailing sabos on the same lake. The heats are a sister event to the youth regatta held in Port Kembla 3 weeks ago, and sponsors hope these inaugural races will become an annual event.
The first few tackles made by the Knights indicated they were keen to grab the early ascendancy, and they did that, trapping the Magpies in their own half for most of the first stanza. The two halves, Fulmer and Hagan, were masterminding the attack, and it was the former Canterbury player who scored for the Knights. Fullback Gary Worth and Steve Fulmer combined beautifully to score the Knights' third try, a length of the field effort from the kick-off. Enjoying an 18-0 lead at the break, it was thought that the rest of the match would be a formality, but someone forgot to tell Western Suburbs to lie down, and it was half-back Simons who scampered over to narrow the gap. Captain Cameron Blair narrowed it even further 3 minutes later. But the Knights were able to hang on and chalk up 2 valuable premiership points. The response to the Johnson & Johnson scheme was overwhelming. Each sundown sunscreen product sold in the Hunter between November and March represented a 20-cent donation to the telethon appeal. Today, the resulting $10,000 cheque was added to the record funds of over $2 million, raised for a melanoma research unit and hospice for palliative care in Newcastle. Sundown product manager Carolyn Heath said telethon had been vital in spreading awareness of the dangers of overexposure to the sun. If the skin is burnt once, the chances of developing malignant melanoma are doubled, she said. And if sunblock is used daily, the risk of developing melanoma is reduced by 78%.
Melanoma is not something that you just catch by going down to the beach. It's UV radiation being absorbed by your skin over many years, and the skin will remember every minute you spend in the sun, and that will accumulate. So it's very important to use a sunscreen every day, particularly if you're a young child, because the first, if you like, 3/4 of your total lifetime exposure will occur in the first 21 years of your life.
After Wednesday's hammering against the Bulldogs, you could excuse the Knights if they eased themselves into the match against the Magpies. But no, they threw themselves into their task and produced some sparkling football. Michael Hagan showed a touch of class to score under the posts, and Jeff Doyle scampered over to give the Knights a handy lead midway through the first half. But the pace of the match deteriorated in the second half, and players kept turning over possession, a legacy of last Wednesday.
Mike, I'm going to put it down to fatigue. The guys, as I said, had a very hard contest on the Wednesday against Canterbury, and it was a very physical contest. And in the first half, they had very good control, good field position. They were quick to get to where they had to get to. And, in the second half, I just put that down to a bit of fatigue.
Alan McMahon couldn't single out any one player as being above the other 12.
The contributing factor from all the players was quite sound, and not only Steve Fulmer and the guys that you've said, but I thought Peter Johnson and Mark Sargent and Tony Butterfield's contribution was excellent, so there was a lot of guys contributing to the victory.
With 2 precious points in the Winfield Cup, attention now switches to next Sunday and the clash with the Balmain Tigers.
Balmain will be very tough and hard, and they're very physical and strong, and they don't show too many doors. So we've got a bit of research to do to find a few doors or to find a few keys to some doors. So hopefully we'll do that. But I'm sure it'll be a very hard game.
The video was previewed today by several city aldermen and civic leaders at a special showing at Newcastle City Hall. The half-hour production was shot and edited by local company Mustard Seed Productions, which says it is the first promotional video to concentrate entirely on Newcastle. The production will be sold at council tourist offices and in some tourist-related businesses. The council has ordered a number of copies to send to civic leaders in Newcastle's various sister cities.
It was a very relaxed Bob Hawke who strolled into Cessnock's Town Hall earlier this evening to a rousing reception from a strong turnout of Cessnock residents. After a long night with federal cabinet thrashing out the Sydney airport issue, Mr Hawke was clearly using tonight to wind down, though the pressures of the third runway debate did not escape his attention.
The easy decision would have been to say, all right, we're not going to run a risk, we'll just go out to Badgerys. The problem with that was it wouldn't have been the right decision for Sydney, for Australia, and so we took the politically tough but the correct decision.
Mr Hawke did not brush on any local matters of real significance until an impromptu press conference afterwards, where when questioned about Newcastle's future in the frigate contract in the wake of allegations that Emacon and the federal government were involved in a sweetheart deal, he angrily attacked the source, Lake Macquarie Mayor Ivan Welsh.
Well, let me, before I say anything on that question, just condemn unequivocally the lying nonsense that's been talked by this local, what's his name? Welsh. Yeah, well, I don't know why people feel, absolutely compelled to get up and lie publicly like this. I mean, it's so unfair to the people in the area that they get up and tell lies like that. It's just absolute blatant lies.
Just last Friday, Mr Hawke was in Newcastle to meet a local government delegation which pledged its commitment to the frigate contract. Mr Hawke repeated tonight he was impressed by that, and while he wouldn't be pressed on the possible outcome, did reveal that it would have at least some good news for Newcastle.
I'm confident that from what I know about intentions and what I understand about the capacity and attitudes of people in this area, I think that you're not going to be unhappy with outcomes.
Accompanying Mr Hawke tonight was the member for Hunter, Eric Fitzgibbon, who will sit again for the seat at the next federal election. And while he was able to capitalise on the presence of the Prime Minister, so too was his Liberal opponent Ashley Saunders, whose campaign was today launched by opposition leader John Howard. Coincidence or not, Mr Hawke says not.
No coincidence at all. I would think he probably found out I was only trying to prepare the ground for me.
The federal seat of Hunter is seen as a marginal seat, and a swing away from Labor, as was seen in the state elections, could see it lose it. But despite that, Mr Hawke saw no threat in Mr Howard's visit.
I think he even was once seen in my electorate. When the peregrinations around the Australian landscape of Mr John Howard don't mean very much. See, what he's got to get support for is not winning the next election. He's got no chance there. What he's engaged in is a desperate ploy to keep the leadership of the Liberal Party.
And as for the topical question of the day, when will the next federal election be? Well, Mr Hawke wouldn't be drawn on that, though he did have a reply for Mr Howard's July prediction.
Well, he's wrong on just about every time he opens his mouth, he's wrong again.
Afterwards, Mr Hawke went on to a dinner at Maitland, attended by more than 350 of the party faithful. Tomorrow he'll tour the Upper Hunter. Among his duties will be the official opening of the revamped Arrowfield Thoroughbred Stud.
Jim Minnis appeared on the Ray Martin midday show on Tuesday and made a desperate appeal to find his sister Carol, who left home when he was just a toddler. Luckily, a friend of Carol saw the show, and today the brother and sister enjoyed an emotional reunion live on television. Following 3 unsuccessful bone marrow transplants from his twin brother Stuart, it was found that Jim was not compatible with his other sister. Carol became his only hope.
We had given up hope because Stuart spent something like about $5,000 with a private investigator trying to find Carol.
Of course, Jim is now very different to how Carol remembered him.
He was cheeky, and I was always getting into trouble for him.
This morning, 49-year-old Carol flew from her home in Melbourne with one of her daughters to meet Jim, and tomorrow tests will begin at St Vincent's Hospital.
Howcroft was summoned to appear before the New South Wales Rugby League judiciary after the Newcastle Knights filed an official complaint. The Knights alleged that Howcroft had attacked the head of their hooker Tony Townsend, and after viewing the videotape, Howcroft was asked to make the trip to Phillip Street. The case was first heard on Monday evening, and the judiciary couldn't make a decision. But last night they handed down their finding, and Ian Howcroft will now spend the next 12 weeks on the sidelines. A spokesman for Western Suburbs said this afternoon that there won't be an appeal against the decision.
The Victorian branch of the National Safety Council celebrated its 60th year of service in 1987. Since then, it's continued to expand mainly into emergency services and especially into other states under the direction of Chief Executive John Friedrich. He, his wife and 3 children are now being sought by federal police in connection with the disappearance of $25 million from Safety Council funds. The council's base is at East Sale, the home of its costly air division. It was here that senior executives first revealed a plan to move their maritime division to Newcastle.
At the moment it's based at Port Wellspool in Bass Strait in Victoria. What we're trying to do is to rationalise by putting that base in a more central location along the eastern seaboard of Australia.
It was a deal that never went past negotiations, but the council already had connections with Newcastle. Their biggest local contract was with RAF Base Williamtown to provide rescue services for downed airmen. The contract was due to expire in June, but a senior RAF spokesman in Canberra said at this stage there was only a verbal agreement to meet that commitment. In Williamtown, Wing Commander Ross Kelly said the rescue service will meet requirements, at least for the next fortnight when the Safety Council crews are due to be paid.
What effect will this have on your operations if in fact they can't meet their commitments?
Well, it certainly has some effect on our operations. It may affect the way in which we need to operate the aircraft and the type of aircraft.
The National Safety Council is a specialised operation requiring highly skilled individuals, many of whom have been recruited from military life. It's understood a delegation representing all employees of the council has approached the liquidator at 2 o'clock today, offering to work the company out of its difficulties. Even so, many must have been wondering what their options were. I'm Tom Hilston for NBN News.
The long weekend accidents have raised a series of issues, whether questions of money should enter such an important service as the rescue helicopter. Questions Director John Skeen is unable to answer. However, in a statement today, Mr Skeen said he was arranging a meeting with ambulance officials in Sydney in an attempt to revert to the system in force before the financial restrictions came into effect. The government funds 30% of the service, with another 30% coming from corporate sponsorship and the remainder coming from community support. A further $600 was put to the fund by the first Bulga Scouts group today. Bulga on the Putty Road is a regular user of the chopper, as there is no easy access for rescue services. It was the first official duty for the Hunter's first Girl Scouts, handing over the cheque they helped raise through a walkathon.
Maitland aldermen threw out the smoking ban proposal decisively with a 12-4 vote, but the general message from the discussion was consideration must be given to non-smokers where food is served. Today, Alderman George McLaughlin, who proposed the ban, was certain the issue will be raised in council again.
It'll come back. The support that is obviously out in the marketplace out there, it's just getting more and more for smoke-free workplaces, smoke-free eating houses. I think it'll come.
Alderman Patrick Hughes, who opposed the motion, believes a ban could never be enforced.
I think that it'll be completely unworkable. I think that it will cost councils heaps of money, which we cannot spare, trying to police and enforce it. And I also believe that it's up to the restaurateurs to be the masters of their own destiny and have that decision whether to allow smoking or otherwise among their patrons themselves.
In Lake Macquarie, councillors decided to push for non-smoking areas for diners. Restaurants will be asked to display a regulation of the Pure Food Act, which states a citizen can prosecute another if offended by their smoking. Council will discuss the matter again in a year's time. Newcastle Council is awaiting a report from officers, which may take several months to prepare before being able to put their smoking ban into effect.
Roma Dowd was baking a pie when the wind struck at about midday. She heard a roar, and then from an upstairs bathroom she heard her granddaughter screaming.
I thought it was the bath heater had blew up.
And you had no warning at all before?
No, nothing. The lady next door said she heard it. She ran round and closed the windows and doors and everything. But she heard this terrific bang.
You ever seen anything like that before?
No, never. We've never had it here.
What do you think it was?
I think it was a mini cyclone, came straight across the water.
The corrugated iron awning was carried intact over the top of the Thornton Street home into the backyard. Mrs Dowd says the new awning was only installed 2 months ago. It's understood the owners are having a long talk with the builders. Elsewhere, wind gusts were causing problems for sailors. Newcastle police-launched Stackpool was called out to escort a Sydney yacht, Pipe Dream, into the harbour after the skipper reported engine failure. About a dozen other yachts were already in port waiting out the strong winds. Motorists were affected throughout the region as wet conditions contributed to a spate of accidents, most involving minor injuries.
Good afternoon, I'm Rebecca Skinner. The Shadow Minister for Family and Community Services today said that 6 more centres in the Hunter are to close as part of the department's cost-cutting exercise, and she fears that the welfare and lives of Hunter children will be put at risk.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6. privacy of the bedroom is the scene for the latest play to hit Newcastle. 4 couples bring out into the open the intimacy usually associated with the bedroom, and the result is the realisation that what happens in that room is not so private. The action centres around the havoc a young couple wreak as they hop from bedroom to bedroom.
Give me 3 good reasons why you shouldn't throw yourself out of that window here and now.
I haven't got any clothes on.
Bedroom farce draws lots of laughs, not only because of the action on stage, but also as the audience identifies with what's happening.
I mean, I've done many comedies, but I don't think I've ever been in one where the laughter comes one on top of the other all night. You see people holding their sides because they can't laugh anymore. And,
because they identify with it, with all the characters in the show.
Also appearing with Amanda Muggleton and June Salter are Paula Duncan and John Orsick, formerly of Cop Shop. Bedroom Farce opens tonight at the Civic Theatre and will run for a week.
He's doing considerable harm. This is my bed, and I don't happen to want people sprawling all over it.
The latest survey of farms in the Dungog, Maitland and Port Stephens areas is part of a 20-year project investigating land use and work patterns, indebtedness and off-farm employment. The Hunter Valley Research Foundation is resurveying properties first studied in 1968 by Cyril Catt and again in 1981 by Professor Harry Schwartzweller. The two are now working with the foundation on a unique 20-year overview of farming in the Lower Hunter.
We're trying to find the changes in farming activities that are taking place and the extent of those changes, what types of farming activity have begun to be more difficult to operate in present circumstances, what new types of farming are beginning to emerge, and what sort of pressures are building up on farming activities.
The survey examines a range of issues including changing property ownership, financial dependence, family involvement and subdivision. Professor Schwartzweller has coordinated similar studies in America, but here he's particularly noted the fast pace of urban and industrial encroachment onto rural land. In 1968, surveyed land comprised 119 properties. That same land now hosts almost 200.
I think this is a warning to Australians in the sense that they have to be careful of their natural resources, and agriculture is a very important natural resource, and you want to monitor those changes.
The much-acclaimed Hunter Orchestra doesn't officially begin its 5th season, this year dubbed the Celebration Season, until Sunday. So today's performance for the Children of the Hunter was actually a sneak preview. The show was aimed at being an introduction to classical music, and as a result the pieces selected were lively and entertaining. There was even a story about a Russian soldier by the name of Lieutenant Kaju, not a usual inclusion on the orchestra's format, but a popular one with the kids. And for the young musicians of the future, a chance to try their hand at conducting and making some beautiful music. As mentioned before, the orchestra opens its season on Sunday at Charlestown Square with, amazingly, a brand new work by Beethoven. But no, it doesn't mean the master has returned. Beethoven's 10th Symphony is a recent reconstruction from what exists only in fragments of a single movement. On Wednesday, the orchestra will perform again at City Hall, featuring this time the talented David Helfgott, sure to be a big draw card.